What's up, guys? This is Daniel from the Fantasy Gods patron account. This is another episode. We have Justin and P here with me today. We're going to be talking about wide receivers. What do you guys look for? How do you guys draft them? How do you guys trade them? What do you guys look for in the rookies coming out? We have everything that you need to know about wide receivers today. So, Justin, please give me something about wide receivers. Let's talk about them.
Yeah, man, the wide receiver position is a fun one, and I think it's one of the most crucial for fantasy purposes. This position is not as injury prone as running backs. It's not as safe as quarterbacks. It's not as risky as tight end. This is the premium position, especially if you're playing PPR. So wide receivers, I think, can win you a league depending on who you have. And so there's a lot of things to look for. Obviously, I think the number one thing for wide receivers is consistency. You want to have a receiver that doesn't get you 0 catches, doesn't get you 0 TDs, somebody that consistently gets you in the double digits. So when I'm evaluating receivers, I'm looking at, A, do they score touchdowns? B, are they just big play guys? Like, do they get 4 catches for 75 yards? Or are they getting 10 catches a game? I'm looking for consistency and proven talent when it comes to receivers, especially like those guys in their primes. But you're also looking for the upside. You're looking for guys who can score multiple touchdowns in the games. A lot of times you're looking for that number one receiver in a lower end offense or higher end offense, but also the number 2 guy in a heavy powered offense. So for me, the wide receiver position is a fun one. I like drafting receivers. And to me, it's one of the cream of the crop positions, even more so than running back and quarterback, especially if you're playing PPR, point reception league.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of piggyback off that, I know it's a really safe strategy to really target, especially like in a snake draft, back-to-back running backs, right? A lot of people try to find, build stability off of that. And then the wide receiver position is really deep, right? But me personally, I like to go the opposite. In the first 3 rounds, I do like to snag up 2 wide receivers at least in a snake draft, right? So ideally, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I love auction or drafting in the back end of a snake draft. Ideally, I like to snatch up at least 1 top 5 wide receiver and another one in the top 7. If I could get 2 top 5, then great, right? If I'm at like that 10 swing pick or even the 9 pick, I'm snatching up two top 5 wide receivers at that point. So so that is my strategy right now. Another thing that Justin was talking about, I mean, you have different types of wide receivers. You have those guys who are the big play threats, right? They may get 5-6 targets a game, but we'll have those big blow up weeks. And then they're red zone threats. So they're not just like your typical deep threat. So like a Kenny Galladay, right? So he'll get like 5, 6, 7 catches, on a good week, but he can go off for like 140, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns off of that. You also have those guys who are here. Give me one quick second.
Hey, P, while you're pulling up whatever you're pulling up, what do you think about drafting like those guys? As like, do you draft all the same of those type of guys? Or are you looking to balance out like, hey, I got a big play my top 5 receiver I drafted is, say it's DK Metcalf. He's going to have 1 week where he's 2 catches for 50 yards, maybe. I'm just throwing examples out. Yeah. And 5 catches for 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then your second receiver, are you looking to draft that same type of upside? Or are you looking like, okay, now I need to balance it out with the Keenan Allen, who's 10 catches for 100 yards every game with limited touchdowns? Like, what's your thought on balancing the types of receivers that you have?
I'm more of give me the volume guy, right? So because I do think there are like I'd like ideally my number 2 wide receiver to be Keenan Allen, right? And then my number 1 wide receiver, I'm always going to be targeting one of the big dogs, whether it's a Devontae Adams, whether it's a D-Hop, Michael Thomas, maybe not last year, but moving forward on Michael Thomas. I'm looking for that volume, right? Somebody that's going to give me 9 catches, somebody that's going to be that quarterback's best friend, the upper echelon type of guys. That's typically who I go. And then I'll supplement that with like a Keenan Allen or an Amari Cooper as my number 2, right? So they'll still, still a huge part of that offense, but just that second tier of wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
Then I like to fill out the rest of my roster, maybe go tight end, some running backs. But with the wide receiver position being as deep as it is, you can get some quality wide receiver threes in like round 5 and 6. So,
Yeah.
so that's generally what I've been sticking to.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that, P. I think for me, when it comes to wide receivers, I target guys that are on good offenses with good QBs. The wide receiver position is very deep. However, when I look at wide receivers, I want them to score touchdowns. And how do you score touchdowns? You're going to score them with elite QBs. I also look at wide receivers that have had huge target shares in the past 3 years, and I look at that because targets equal catches, equal yards, equal touchdowns, equal points, and then at the end of the day, I don't care how much talent the guy has. What I care about is production. Production matters, points matter, and wins matter. So for me, I'm targeting guys that are going to get the targets. Guys like Stephon Diggs, D Hop, Devontae Adams, the Calvin Ridleys, the Tyreek Hills, all guys on good offenses that are going to get the targets for the points.
Boom, love that.
Another thing, you really, just to piggyback off what you said, it is important and something to prioritize is for their team to be competitive. Because what you don't want is somebody to be on just, a team that's going nowhere. So they don't really have much to play for in the when it comes to the fantasy playoffs. So they may, have an injury that they typically would play through, but just, call it a season and sit out, putting your whole season really in jeopardy. So, just
I agree with that, but then I think there's also the reverse of that too. I think another thing to look for with receivers is also who's going to get the volume no matter what, because there are some offenses that tend to tone it down when it comes to fantasy playoffs. They've already got the seasons won, so they're not going to be putting up as many points as well in week 15, 16, or 16 and 17 now. But they're not going to be putting up as many points. They may start to tailor their offenses more to the run game. And I think a second part of that is also knowing when to draft receivers based on their schedules too, because some of those teams play in domes in the wintertime. Some of those teams play outdoors in wintertime when there's snow, when there's wind, there's rain. And so you're looking at guys in Philly, Chicago, some of those snowy, windy type cities. A lot of times you might want to stay away from that, or even receivers in those divisions, because you want to look for those matchups indoors in a dome or when there's clear skies. So I think that knowing those cities too, it plays a big factor. And I want to start to talk a little bit more too about like size. Like, is size a big thing for you guys when it comes to receivers and where you're looking at? Because we see a lot of the bigger guys, they're the ones that are more explosive. They have the touchdown potential. They're the red zone threats. But there's also a huge injury risk when it comes to those bigger body type receivers versus the smaller guys who are more catch dependent, but they're more consistent when it comes to their targets. What are you guys' thoughts on looking at like size? And I know, Dan, this is somewhere where you really specialize, especially when it comes to dynasty.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you kind of my tidbits on how to find rookie receivers, but also look at the top receivers and their size, and basically kind of give you a kind of a breakdown as far as what I look for. If you take the people, I'm just going to go with 2020, and just to make it very simple, if you take the top 10 receivers just in targets alone, so the top guy was Stephon Diggs, and going down, it's DeAndre Hopkins, Allen Robinson, Devontae Adams, Robbie Anderson, Tyreek Hill, and Terry McLaurin. Those are going to be your top 10 receivers with the target share. So for me, when I look at target share, I just basically look at the quarterback is telling me that this guy is either consistently getting open or he's just awesome. So if the quarterback is saying that this dude's good, then to me, I have to adjust and find those premier talents as the rookie drafts come up. So having said that, so if I take the averages of all of those guys, the 10 guys that I just mentioned, So as far as size go, the average size is about 6'1.5". So about 6'1" is the average size. It's not going to be your DK Metcalfs, which is the 6'5", 6'6s, the Julio Jones 6'4s. Those guys are huge. They're physical freaks, the Calvin Johnsons of the world. But these guys are consistently getting target shares, and they're around 6 feet. So that's number one. Number two is majority of these guys run about a 4.46 to 4.49 as far as their 40 times. So they're not below 4.40 like a Tyreek Hill. I know we mentioned Tyreek Hill in there, but he's the anomaly. They're usually around a 4.49 as far as average speed. So you take into consideration the speed. Then you start looking at what did they do in college? I look at the college dominator, and dominator rating is basically what is the percentage of teams yardage when in the quarter compared to the other wide receivers on the team, and what is their percentage in touchdowns. And if as long as they have like a 33% chance, 33% dominator or higher, that's what I'm looking for, and that's what you see with these top guys. You also see a breakout age of 19.4. What is a breakout age? Breakout age is basically when did this particular prospect earn 20% dominator rating in college. So a lot of these guys are breaking out around 19.5 or earlier. So if you get something better than that, then they're an elite prospect. So for example, going into my rookie class, to give you an example of the people that have met these criterias, factoring in, speed score, burst score, all the other agility drills and stuff like that. There's only a few wide receivers that actually meet this criteria. So the big name criteria, as you can tell, is Jamar Chase and Rashad Bateman. Two of those guys, you're going to have to draft early to capitalize on selecting these guys. But there are guys that are going to be had in the second to third to fourth, maybe even undrafted, that meet all the criteria that I look for in a wide receiver prospect that match the top 10 guys. Those guys are Terrence Marshall. Mm-hmm. You have Seth Williams, who is on Denver, crowded, but he meets the criteria. Nico Collins, who is on the Houston Texans. And we talked about this in an earlier episode. Who's the number one receiver in Houston? We got Brandon Cooks, but he's trending down in the dynasty realm. So Nico Collins is someone to consider. And the last one is kind of surprising. He's a 7th round pick of the New Orleans Saints, and that's Kawan Baker. He could be the next heir apparent. Traquan Smith hasn't done too much. We don't know where he's going to be. Exactly. We don't know who's the other receiver. I don't know. I have no idea. But obviously it's Michael Thomas and then the rest. So he has a chance, even though he was a 7th round pick. He has all the measurables. He broke out at an earlier age. He dominated in college and given his share. He has good speed. He has good burst. He has a good 40 time. He has adequate height. These are the things that you need to look for if you want to win your rookie drafts, and then which you take that into your dynasty team and build a dynasty team from the ground up.
Now, Dan, I want to question you on that real quick, because you mentioned like the dominators in college. You mentioned, okay, this player, the heir apparent to Traquan Smith. Like when you're looking at players too, because that dominator rating is for college, they're the number one guy on their team. Are you also looking at situation when they come into the draft? Because you mentioned Rashad Bateman as your number 2, as the only other guy that was highly drafted. Rashad Bateman and obviously Jamar Chase. Are you looking at situation because he's going to a Ravens team that is their quarterback's gonna throw for 3,500 yards max. And so there's not a lot of spread there with the offense. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, situation is something that you have to factor in. There is no, you can't not factor it in. I will say this is that I will draft a Rashad Bateman over a shoot, maybe an Elijah Moore, where is even they're both situational. Elijah Moore is having a good buzz, and we can talk about that in a minute. But you have to consider that sometimes talent is just talent, and you need to draft it. Like Calvin Johnson went to the Lions. You just draft the talent, and then eventually the situations change, because in the NFL situations change like that. You can see it with the Niners. They just had a solid quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo, but now boom, they got Trey Lance, and that situation changed dramatically. You now add a super dynamic weapons from the leg standpoint, from the arm standpoint. Hopefully he's good in the mental standpoint. So now the Niners can now, if he's good, they start moving in the incredible trajectory, which I think they can. So
when he's good, just to correct that, when he's good.
Yeah, when he's good. Yeah.
I got a question really quick, not to cut you off, but
go ahead.
So are you telling me that based off of, I guess my question is, what do you prioritize more? Would you prioritize the statistics and the data over the situation? And then where would you, I guess, rank amongst these rookies, St. Brown for Detroit? Because I look at him and I see that I see he's in a situation where we don't know who the hell is going to be the starting wide receivers over there. But at the same time, he's got Goff, which, I mean, he's Goff, but I mean, like, where would you rank him, with all things considered?
Sure. So, I mean, again, situation is something that you have to consider. Situation for me is more important to the running back position than it is to the receiver position. It's just me personally, how I look at it. I want running backs on good teams, because on good teams, they tend to get in the red zone. And when they get in the red zone, typically they tend to pound the rock and they get in there for the touchdown. With wide receivers, I'm okay with taking talent and letting the situation fall to them personally. That's just the way I viewed it. As far as Amon St. Brown, how does he measure up? Well, he's 5'11", so he's on the apex of size. I mean, we'd like to see him taller. He doesn't have good speed, so his speed score is lower, but he does have good bursts. I like his burst. His 40-yard dash, again, he was a 4.66, so we'd like to see him faster than the 4.66. But he did break out at an early age at his college, so he does have a good dominator rating where he was productive at the college level, and he doesn't have any competition. So he's just kind of like an Elijah Moore to me. It's basically, just pick your favorite guy and roll with it. Goff is going to be adequate, but I think Detroit's not going to be good. I think the Jets aren't going to be good. So again, I probably would, depending on where he fell, probably would just stay away from him, because I don't think he's at an elite level as far as what I look for in my metrics. Now, it doesn't mean I'm wrong or right. It's just I'm going to stay away from him. That's just me personally. Unless he falls into the late second, third round, I'm not considering him.
Okay. And I think that's a good point, man. It's just taking situations overall in general, because players, you mentioned that, their situations change, their production changes because their coaching might change too. Like, you have different systems that come in, some prioritize different things about receivers. They somewhat quicker passes, somewhat longer passes. So coaching change, the receiver will change, a running back will change, which will open things up. They'll add another receiver. So I'm 100% with you on there. And I also think this is another topic that we need to have, since we're on the receiver game and really just talking about receivers in general, is what to look for when you're trying to acquire a receiver. Like, say you're in a dynasty league, or even if you're in the middle of a season. And P, I want to kind of go this direction with you, my man. what are you looking for when it comes to buying high and selling low on receivers based on past production and what you're expecting from him in the future? Because guys like Julio Jones just changed teams, and it's like the average fan out there may want to view him as, okay, we're automatically going to put him as a wide receiver 3 because he's on a team with AJ Brown. What are you looking for when it comes to like just finding value at the receiver position where you can either acquire, trade, or maybe you're looking to ship out?
So what I'm looking for is, and this can apply to dynasty because I don't treat my dynasty too different than I would my my redraft. Because I still think that in a dynasty in a dynasty league, my team is still fluid just based off of like
Yep.
transactions. So what I do look for, like let's say mid-season, is I look for these people who may have had a string of going against like tough defenses, right? So they may have had like 2 consecutive down weeks. And then and I'm really just looking to target the studs, right? Because it's not necessarily just the studs, but some household names, right? Because in the end, whether they start, whether they go through a rough patch, that owner may be thinking like, this is a down year. Oh man, I'm like, I whiffed on this one. Okay, what do I do now? Kind of in a panic mode. But I know that these people, especially if he has a consistent, a consistent few years of production, that his numbers are going to even out at the end of the season. So that's what I'm looking at when these people are going through buy lows, right? Their situations, their offensive lines, that's a big one. If their quarterback can stay healthy, or if their offensive line is shaky, if that quarterback is, it can potentially go down. That may be somebody I'm looking to avoid. Or if I have something like that, that I'm just not too confident in. I mean, obviously, I'm waiting until he has like a big game. And I'm not letting people know that this person is on the market, right? Because I think if you put that out there too much, then it can bring the value down. Like, oh, this guy P's trying to get rid of him. But what you want to do is you want to wait till he has this big game, and then maybe even make an offer for somebody you really want. And then if they counter, then you counter without even saying anything, putting this big name in there, right? And more often than not, you're going to get an acceptance, and somebody really thinking that they got one up on you. But let alone in the future, he's going to, his playoff schedule may be rough, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking at when I'm doing my deals, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I love that because you're looking to acquire names. Sometimes it is about flipping pieces, and it depends on your league, because there's leagues that trade very often, like a lot of the leagues that all of us 3 are in. There's a lot of heavy volume when it comes to trades, and owners are willing to accept deals and maybe even overpay for players that they want. But there's some leagues that don't trade as much, so you got to come really precise with the players that you want. And one thing I tend to look for is fallen stars that are in their prime. So a lot of times players will have a great season and then they'll have, a bad season. And so I'm looking for players that may have been top 5 before in the past, but are now valued as back-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. And the reason I'm looking for those guys is because a lot of times they know they had a bad season. They know they played like shit. So guess what? Their quarterback, they're talking to their quarterback all offseason. They may have had an injury. They may have been seeing some different coverages. Like there's different things that could have been going on that season. But a lot of times what fantasy owners see is what was the last season, what happened. So you go and you look at 2 years ago, right? You're looking at the top receivers, let's just say for yardage in 2019. We're talking a year removed from last year. We're looking at Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, Chris Godwin, Devontae Parker, Keenan Allen, Kenny Golladay. Out of those 5, none of them were a top wide receiver last year, right? Mm-hmm. And so we move on to 2020, and those same guys, none of them are there. We're looking at Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Jefferson, Calvin Ridley, and Devontae Adams were the top 5 for yardage. Those are all different players. To me, that screams, okay, there's a regression to the mean. Now, if 2 of those names are there next year as the top receivers of 2021, I'll give them their props. But now I'm looking for guys in that 6 to 15 tier that had good target volume, that may have had either injuries, they may have been part of that production issue, they may have had some drop balls, some things that just didn't go their way. And so now for 2020, we're looking at DK Metcalf, Allen Robinson, DJ Moore, Scary Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, Robbie Anderson, AJ Brown. Those are names I'm looking at as, okay, if I can get two or three of these guys at the back end of the second round, beginning of the third round, or maybe for $20, $30 when it comes to an auction, these are guys that can come on your team, have the upside you need to be a top 5 guy, especially when you're looking at, Allen Robinson, you're looking at Terry McLaurin, maybe a Mike Evans, a Keenan Allen, guys that are still in their prime, AJ Brown, that can have a good season because you know that they're looking to make an impact next season. So I'm always looking to buy low. And I'm selling high on some of those names that had a 1 year. So you're like, hey, man, this guy kind of had a breakout year. We didn't really expect it. A lot of times I'm going to fade that guy. I'm going to fade the guy who had one good season because the chances of them repeating it are very slim. There's been very few guys who are able to be consistent and do that. So it's all about balance, man, and what you value. I think that's why we saw Chris Godwin kind of fall off last year. Yeah. I think we might expect a rebound year from him even this year. So just some things that I look at, and I'm looking to find those owners too who drafted. Week one,
I'm gonna piggyback on that. I will say that I think the perfect candidate for that, in just my opinion, I think is Juju Smith-Schuster. I think
that was the only person that came to mind, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about, hey, that's cool. When you're talking about guys that have had a bad season, he had a horrible season as far relative to his dynasty stock coming into the season. He was viewed as a top 5 dynasty wide receiver coming into 2020. He, for whatever reason, loved the TikTok dances and this, that, and the other.
That Bengals game, what kind of set up straight there.
So
these TikTok guys, man. Hey, it's a whole different,
the TikTok guys.
Remember when T.O. was signing footballs and Chad Johnson was salsa? Now they're just taking it straight to TikTok, man.
Hey, speaking of Juju, add us at Fantasy Gods on TikTok.
Hey. Let's go. Hey, so like I said, I think that he really had a bad year relative to where he was drafted, what people expect of him. So when you're talking about guys that are now viewed as a low end, I mean, he's probably viewed as a low end wide receiver 3 now. I mean, this stock is just plummeting. But I think that he also took this whole thing to heart. He canceled the TikTok for a minute. He was letting people know, like, look, man, I was messing up. I need to move forward. And I think that he came back. He came back to Pittsburgh for a reason. He could have signed with the Chiefs. Like, what are you doing, dude? Why aren't you signing with Mahomes? But he came back. He said, look, I got one more year with Big Ben. It's his last year. Let's see what we can do. And I think that he could rebound. He has the talent to rebound. We've seen it, but at the same time, is he that number one? Without AB, he should prove that he wasn't. So hopefully he could step up. Still very young. So I like Juju in that sense. He's only 24 and a half. Juju.
Yeah. And I'm also looking at wide receiver 1s too. Like in the back end of, you're looking at like, hey, wide receiver 3s or wide receiver 4s as options. I'm looking for the hogs on their team, even if it's a run-heavy offense or maybe they didn't have such a productive year last year. I'm looking for number 1s, clear-cut number 1s on offenses, and especially the young ones too, the ones that, hey, they were drafted 3 years ago and they haven't lived up to expectations. They were taken in the first round, but they've only had 700 yards one year, 4 touchdowns the next. They haven't put it all together yet. I'm looking at those year 3 to 5 guys who are the number 1s on their team and maybe, just maybe, are on the cusp of something big. So when you look at players like Jerry Jeudy, you're looking at players like Michael Pittman to me, even more so than a Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, you're looking for those guys who have the upside, I think, to take you there. A DJ Chark type of player, a Deebo Samuel type player, somebody we know, okay, they're probably the number 1 guy on their team this season. And if they do hit, if it hits, especially if you're taking them as your third, fourth receiver,
Yeah,
if it hits, you have a number one receiver on your team. I like those guys for the upside.
definitely. Now, circling back, I do got a question really quick. In regards to dynasty, how do you guys look at wide receivers who, although are talented, their quarterbacks are fading, like you mentioned in Pittsburgh? Like, where does that affect your rankings of that whole young wide receiving core? That Big Ben's not going to be in there. Do you knock them down if you're doing like a startup dynasty? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so for me, I look at their contracts. I actually just go in and look and see how long are these guys locked in to this quarterback that's declining. Again, situations change like that, but Claypool, for example, I think that he has immense size, speed, athleticism. He proved that he could score touchdowns at will. One game he had 4 of them. I mean, he's just a beast. But he's locked in into 4 years, I believe. I believe was he a second rounder? I think he was a second round pick, second or third round pick. Can't think of what's on my head, but I mean,
think second round, Mapletron.
Yeah, he's awesome, but at the same time, he's locked in to that Steeler offense for the next 2 years after this year. So I'm definitely, to me, I'm fading that, but I'm buying Juju, whereas his value's going down. It's kind of like a stock. It's kind of like Apple tanking. We know that he can be productive, but we also know that he's on a 1-year deal, and he was close to signing with the Chiefs. At least the Chiefs extended him a contract. Who knows how the Chiefs look next year? He could be on his way over there. Who knows? But I would buy Juju at his price, and I'm fading Claypool at his based on situations like that.
Yeah, that's a good question, Pete. I think when it comes to quarterbacks, especially when it comes to dynasty, you're talking a dynasty team. So you'll have the receiver for 5 to 7 years, ideally, at elite production. And I think when you're looking at these teams, you're seeing now that these teams are willing to draft a QB that's talented right after they've lost a great quarterback, or they're willing to bring in. The quarterback position is just so talented now that I don't think there's a big drop-off. If you have a team, you're looking at like the Saints, and you look at Michael Thomas, you're like, okay, he was on my dynasty team 2 years ago, number 1 receiver. Drew Brees is gone. Now you got Jameis Winston there, potentially Taysom Hill. And it's like, okay, the situation isn't that bad. You're looking at, another receiver, maybe Keenan Allen. You're like, oh, man, he was putting up good numbers with Tyrod Taylor. They got this guy, Justin Herbert, coming in. Boom, that's actually the perfect fit for him. So you don't know what a receiver is going to do with a Trey Lance or a Zach Wilson or Trevor Lawrence now, or Justin Fields. That may be the perfect send for an Allen Robinson who had good years, but now could potentially have an even better year with the quarterback. So I think if you're looking at quarterback situations, I'm actually going to flip a little bit opposite down on this one and say that it's not relevant. I think you draft for talent because you are playing a long game when it comes to receivers. Their prime may be with a different quarterback 2 years later in a different system. So I think when you're looking at the quarterback scenario, the quarterbacks are fluid, but the position is so talented with quarterbacks now, you get the right rookie in there, it enhances the receiver's value.
Okay, well, let me ask you something real quick, just off that on that topic, right? So, more so to redraft, right? So the number 1 wide receiver last year, we're looking at Devontae Adams, right? His situation is similar, right? We don't know. I mean, it's still up in the air, but it's leaning. Well, what Aaron Rodgers is saying is he's not going to play. So,
right.
With Jordan Love at quarterback, knowing what Aaron Rodgers kind of does with his wide receivers, with Jordan Love at quarterback, where would you rank him amongst the wide receivers? Is he still in your top 5? Is he in your top 3? Does he fall out maybe to the back end of the top 10? What are you guys looking at on that?
I'm looking at talent. To me, talent prevails. And when you got a guy like Devontae Adams, you have to trust in the receiver. You got a receiver that can put up that kind of yardage. I give some of that to Aaron Rodgers, but you also got to give that to the receiver too, man.
No, and I get that. I get that. But we're in comparison to everybody else who's talented. Like if you're in like the 8 hole or if you're in like a 6 hole in a snake draft, right? You have all these wide receivers here.
Yeah.
Knowing that talent is there with Devontae, but you still have every other buddy who's talented. Where are you passing up on him to get somebody that is.
Yeah. So I'll answer the question. Hell no. I ain't touching Devontae Adams, bro. I'm not touching him at all.
Okay.
I'm not gonna touch him.
You're not touching him?
No, I'm not. I'm not touching him at all. I don't know who Jordan Love is. I don't know who this guy is. This guy could be, Andy Dalton for all I know. No, as soon as you go from an elite quarterback, it is extremely difficult for these GMs to line up the next elite guy. I mean, Green Bay has had a history of, okay, Brett Favre comes in, Aaron Rodgers comes in. But, I mean, is Love that guy? I don't know. I'm not willing to risk it in redraft. That's just something as far as I'm willing to more risk Deshaun Watson because I know that he can affect the outcome greater than a receiver can. Now, have we seen this scenario happen before with DeAndre Hopkins where he moved around with trash receivers like Brock Osweiler and all them? Yes, that's great. I mean, DeAndre is wonderful, but he wasn't a league winner at that time. He was a low end wide receiver one, and he only did that based on his godly talent, which was awesome. And Devontae Adams is a different receiver than D-Hop as well. So got to factor that in. And to me, I'm just not touching him. If you're going to take him in your top 10 receivers with Jordan Love, if we know Jordan Love is the starting quarterback and he will be for the entire season, not touching Devontae Adams.
Give me, man, I think that's complete. I think you have to put Devontae Adams still in your top 5. When you have somebody who's capable of being the number 1 wide receiver in 12 games, he didn't play all the games last year. 12 games, the number 1 receiver, like to me, you have to take that. That's just talent. And it doesn't matter the quarterback position because you got a guy like Scary Terry still putting up wide receiver 1 numbers with whoever at quarterback. You have Allen Robinson putting up wide receiver 1 numbers with whatever quarterback. Sometimes the quarterback situation isn't all that's there. Jordan Love throws for 3,500 yards. Who's getting the yards on that team? It's still Devontae Adams. He throws for 20 to 25 touchdowns. Who's getting the touchdowns on that team? It's still Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams is the guy no matter what. We saw Matt Flynn come into the system, do the same type of thing. A lot of times these systems are set up for quarterbacks. I get it. Aaron Rodgers, Hall of Fame quarterback, but it looked like he was tailing off even towards the end of his career a couple of seasons ago. He came back. And it's like, I think sometimes the situation, offensive coordinator doesn't get enough love. And a lot of times these guys can come in and replicate similar production with lesser quarterbacks. Like you said, D-Hop did the same thing with numerous quarterbacks when Deshaun Watson wasn't there. And to me, I think talent prevails. If I got a top, if I'm looking at wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, and I'm like, okay, I got to pick between Devontae Adams, let's say, and a Calvin Ridley or maybe a Justin Jefferson, I'm going to take Devontae Adams straight up. I'm going to take Devontae Adams in that role because I think that the potential is there for more reward than it is. Even though you don't know, one of these quarterbacks can break their legs, man. Straight up. We saw Dak get hurt last year. Amari Cooper's value tank. I'm gonna take the player, and I'm gonna trust the situation more than I'm gonna trust I don't know what Jordan Love has done.
So you're saying
Jordan Love can come in and throw. He can come and throw for 3,500 yards, 4,000 yards, and we know Devontae Adams is locked in as the number 1 receiver if he stays healthy.
So you're saying that you'll take you trust the wide receiver over the situation, right? So let me give you a quick scenario, right? So you're sitting there. Jordan Love is a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers retired. He ends up getting the gig on whatever game show he was talking about. But so
Jeopardy host.
The Jeopardy, right? And now we're talking about wide receivers that are in Jeopardy. So, but you're sitting there, right? And then you're looking at Devontae Adams, DK, and AJ Brown. Who you taking?
Devontae Adams.
Hell no. Cap. Hell no. Nah,
why?
Bro.
I'm taking Devontae Adams. I'm taking Devontae Adams.
Let me
you said DK, AJ Brown?
Yeah.
First of all, AJ Brown, obviously, I think that speaks for itself. I'm going to take Devontae Adams 100% over AJ Brown. And then when it comes to DK Metcalf, same thing. I'm going to take Devontae Adams as the number 1 locked receiver. I know when it comes to playoff time, I know what the potential is. Obviously, me and you played each other in playoffs. I know what Devontae Adams
maybe, yeah. You got some bad taste
up.
with DK. You got some bad taste in your mouth with DK. Okay.
No, but when it comes to these receivers, man, when you have an elite guy, sometimes it doesn't matter what quarterback they play with, they're going to put up production. Their production becomes more elite with a more elite quarterback. But I think you have to go with the talent, man. When it comes to elite, the top cream of the crop receivers, they get their numbers with whoever's at quarterback. It doesn't matter.
Now, I will say this, right? The reason why I'm focusing on Devontae Adams is because we've seen in the past that if Aaron Rodgers wants to make a wide receiver a really good one, he can, right? And then we've seen those same wide receivers go to other teams and not do as well. They fall into maybe wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range, like we've seen with Jordy Nelson. We've seen that with Greg Jennings. We've seen that with a few people, right? So I do think that obviously Aaron Rodgers is great. He's historic. But I also think the fact that he leans so heavily on his one wide receiver, whether it's by choice or whether it's by the way that the team has made that decision, that does inflate a wide receiver's numbers, like on his team. That doesn't inflate Green Bay's number one wide receiver's number. So Devontae Adams is talented, yes, but when you factor in the fact that it's going to be Jordan Love, who we don't know who he is, you have to account for a huge drop off. He's not going to replicate those numbers.
Y'all are just scared. No, y'all are just scared that you don't know what Jordan Love's going to do. Straight up, you guys are scared that you don't.
It has nothing to do with being scared, but you're comparing somebody's ceiling. Like with Jordan Love, Jordan Love's not going to be Aaron Rodgers. Let's just get that out of the way, right?
Not this season, yes.
So so with Devontae Adams, his ceiling is going to be at a DK or an AJ Brown with Jordan Love, right? But his floor is so much lower. So that's why I'm fading them for either of those two guys.
Yeah,
he may be in the back end. He may be in the back end. He may be some. And you know what? And this is the funny thing in comparison to Devontae Adams to a situation that is like Allen Robinson, right? Allen Robinson is a freak of nature where he can jump up and go get it. His catch radius is probably the best of any receiver this last year, right? He had the trashiest quarterbacks thrown to him, and he's just going up and go get it. I think I definitely think he's going to be much better this year with a rookie quarterback, but I don't see Devontae Adams as being that, as turning.
But like I said, I think the Jordan Love thing is what's scaring you guys away. But then if it's a rookie quarterback, we're looking at Justin Fields. We don't know what Justin Fields is going to do when he gets on the field. No pun intended. We don't know what Justin Fields is going to do, right, with Allen Robinson. So
this just in, yeah.
This just in. Now we can say the same thing when it comes to a lot of receivers with unknown quarterbacks or quarterbacks in different situations. I'm going to trust Jordan Love, who's been in the offense, who's had a chance to learn behind Aaron Rodgers, who's had a chance to work with Devontae Adams, and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to trust that because he's not just a brand new quarterback thrown in a random situation. This guy was drafted high draft equity already. They know what he's there, and we haven't seen him on tape. So we're like, oh, okay, it's not going to be Aaron Rodgers. I think the part where I mentioned scared isn't like you as a person. It's like, I think just in general, the fantasy community is scared of the drop off between Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love, when it might be a 500-yard difference. And yeah, there might be some more turnovers when it comes to Jordan Love, but I don't necessarily think that the yardage, maybe the touchdowns, I don't think the yardage is going to be that big of a factor. And you start to think of the number 2 receiver there, like, to me, it's a no-brainer to take Devontae Adams with Jordan Love. I'm going to take the chance that especially in Dynasty, that he develops a relationship with Devontae Adams and says, you know what, that guy Aaron Rodgers is pretty good throwing to Devontae Adams. I'm going to do the same thing.
Okay. All right. We got to move on from this. But
I think that's a good topic, like segue into some of these tiers, man. Let's go through some of these tiers and just like pick random. We'll go through. I have Fantasy Pros pulled up right now. So you guys pull Fantasy. I have Fantasy Pros pulled up. Let's go over some of these tiers. We'll start in tier 1. Tier 1 right now, number 1 is Tyreek Hill. Number 2 is Devontae Adams. And number 3 is Stephon Diggs. Who do you like the best out of there and why?
Go ahead, P. I'm gonna catch up.
I'm getting, let me get this.
Yeah, we got Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs. And I'll start off with that. Obviously, I think Tyreek Hill seems like the no-brainer to me. He's in the offense, Casey's offense, Pat Mahomes obviously throwing to him. But I think I'm going to go with Stephon Diggs here. I think Diggs, to me, seems like he's going to be the wide receiver one this year. Overall, I would pick him. If we're doing our rankings today, I would pick Stephon Diggs as my number one overall receiver. And that's because I think that they're going to take Josh Allen. They're going to take some of that rain they were throwing him at his way in the red zone and pull that back a little bit. I think they want to see Josh Allen get through the season healthy. I also think that Stephon Diggs is ready to take the lead, man. I think he had a proven year last year. He was like, hey, I got traded. I'm the guy. He made things happen. I expect to see bigger things out of him this year because they're going to be hunting for that Super Bowl. I really like what Stephon Diggs brings to the table, and I think he was a little underrated in the fantasy community for a while. He might be just rated correctly now, but I still think there's a lot more in store for this guy. When you talk about production for Stephon Diggs last year, led the league in receptions, 127 catches. To me, he had a target share, 166. To me, there's no drop-off. I don't see a huge drop-off with there or any real challenger to that coming in soon. He had 1,500 yards, 8 touchdowns. And I think the touchdowns will go up this year. I see him in double-digit touchdowns, similar yardage, similar receptions. Give me Stephon Diggs as the number one receiver this year in fantasy football.
You know what? Just with this tier, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and Stephon Diggs, I can agree with that. Stephon Diggs slightly edging out Tyreek Hill. I mean, we know what Tyreek's going to do, right? Tyreek's going to put up numbers. But it seems like with those two, when you're looking at them and you're looking at the style of play, and Jay, you already know what I'm going to say. Stephon Diggs looks like a dog. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
dog.
He plays with a certain level of passion that he wants to be the best, right? When they lost to KC, he sat there and was watching them celebrate that AFC championship. And that says something, right? I mean, his offense is just as explosive as KC's, right? Maybe a slight downtick or whatnot, but I mean, he's that guy. He's that target hog, and that's what you're looking for in a number one wide receiver. You want somebody to get peppered. You want somebody to be explosive. His route running is elite. I don't know. I can't think of anybody who's a better route runner than him right now. Maybe Keenan Allen, but his route running is elite. So I would, if I'm ranking this tier, I'm going Diggs. Right under Diggs is Tyreek Hill. And honestly, I think I'm driving Devontae Adams. If Aaron Rodgers don't play, Devontae Adams ain't in this tier. But just for the sake of it, I mean, he's clearly number 3.
Yeah, I'll hop on this one. Yeah, so if we're looking at this tier from Fantasy Pros, shout out to them for ranking, to give us something to talk about. I'm definitely still on the board of Tyreek Hill, number 1 wide receiver. Mahomes he's just so good. And I like Josh Allen. That's my boy. And shout out to Bills Mafia. But who knows if Josh Allen can stay the course? That's my only thing. I hope he is. He's been steady going forward and he has broken the mold, because when he came out, everybody was questioning his accuracy. Everyone was questioning his deep ball. Everyone was questioning that going in, and he was very, very risky. There were some questions about Mahomes. He wasn't a number 1 overall pick for a reason, but since he's been in the league, he's been nothing flat short of dominant. So I want the number 1 receiver with the number 1 quarterback. As far as the second guy, it's definitely still Stephon Diggs. To piggyback off of P, he's the best route runner in the league. He plays with that dog mentality. He is that dude. You see him on Instagram, you see him on Twitter. He's just the man. They made the perfect trade with the Vikings. I think they got their piece, we got ours, and I think it was a perfect deal for both sides. And he's just an animal. He was an elite receiver on the Vikings, and he was just untapped with Josh Allen and his big cannon of an arm. As far as Devontae Adams, he's definitely not even in my tier 1 of receivers. Can't put him in there unless Aaron Rodgers plays. If Aaron Rodgers plays, he is no doubt a top receiver, and I would put him ahead of Diggs if Aaron Rodgers plays.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Let's move on to this number tier 2. And for this one, instead of ranking them, let's do something different. Let's pick one receiver out of the bunch, who can move up into the tier 1 category, and one receiver who's going to move out of the tier 2 and move down to tier 3. The names on the list are Calvin Ridley, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, DeAndre Hopkins, and Justin Jefferson.
Easy.
So let's start with you, man. Let's hear one guy you think, all right, he has a chance to make it into this tier 1 and be a top 3 receiver, and the other one who's going to fall off and probably be a wide receiver 2-ish type player.
Easy. Give me D-Hop all day to jump into that tier 1, right? So we know what D-Hop's talent is, and we talked about this on the last podcast. I think in that first year in Arizona, they had him running the most basic routes, right? A lot of out routes. We've seen some. I mean, he would go for the occasional big plays, like kind of when he beat your Bills.
Jump man.
But I really think that they're going to open it up for him. They're not just going to send him on these slants or send him on these 5-yard out routes. I think they're going to open it up for him. One more year playing with Kyler, one more year in Kingsbury's offense. I think that he's going to make that jump, right? We're going to see the D-Hop that we used to see, and he's still getting peppered, right? He's still getting peppered. So I'm just hoping that he's going to be getting peppered with higher quality routes. As far as somebody that I see dropping out of this tier, I'm looking at Calvin Ridley, right? Like, everybody's high on him. I mean, he has a lot of stuff to be high about, but what do we see traditionally when you see a number 2 guy go from the number 2 role to the number 1 role? He's getting, he's getting covered by that number 1 corner. Defenses are rolling and playing towards him. I'm not saying that he's going to drop off. I'm not saying that he's going to fall off the earth, but I'm saying that he, in my opinion, out of these people that we're looking at here, has the best chance to drop down to that tier 3 range.
All right. Yeah. All right. I'll say Calvin Ridley has the ability to go higher. I think he's my pick.
I'm just a hater.
You're just a hater. It's good.
Hey, that's self-realization. You said you're just a hater.
Yeah. I mean, you have to consider. To me, he was an elite asset when Julio Jones was not there. The only thing that I'll say about him when Julio Jones wasn't there was that his touchdown production went tanked. But when you factor in his targets, his yards, his catches, they were all up in the elite tier. There's going to be a lot of focus on Kyle Pitts. Everyone's hyping Kyle Pitts. And so the NFL defenses will want to stop Kyle Pitts just because they don't want this rookie coming in, beating everybody. And Matt Ryan will continue to feed his toy, and that's Calvin Ridley. So that would be my pick to continue to move up. I definitely won't say that he has the potential to be wide receiver 1, but he can definitely get into a tier. He's in a dome for half of his games. Matt Ryan is still an elite passer. I mean, he's good enough. And with Kyle Pitts on the helm, I think Kyle Pitts is going to be enough to get the coverages off of Calvin Ridley. There's a lot of targets vacated from Julio Jones' departure. So that's just going to go more to Calvin Ridley. I could see Calvin Ridley getting 150 targets this year. Just easily. And their defense is not that good, so they're going to continue to throw the ball. And especially in a dome, it's going to be good. As far as a wide receiver that could move out of this tier, I think it's Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson has the ability to move out based on the fact that he has the worst, in my opinion, has the worst quarterback of the wide receivers in this tier.
Without a doubt.
So in my opinion, he has the worst quarterback. Their run game is still going to be good with Dalvin Cook, and their defense is still middle tier. So for me, a lot of attention is going to come to him. You hear the term sophomore slump. So for me, how is he going to respond? Is he still going to be that dog? Because I think he has that dog in him when we talk about Stephon Diggs. Mm-hmm. Justin Jefferson has that dog in him. He's had that chip on his shoulder since day one. I think it was even a 2 to 3 star prospect. He was disrespected coming into LSU. He was disrespected while on LSU because Jamar Chase had all the touchdowns, had all the glory. But he came in on fire, and he was also disrespected in the draft. He was like the fourth or fifth receiver taken. So there's tons of things as far as Justin Jefferson and his motivation. But when you look at it, I think that he has the potential to go out of that tier.
Yeah, I gotta. So I would piggyback and just agree with you, Dan. I think Calvin Ridley's going to have a monster season. He has that Devontae Adams effect for me, where his older star quarterback leans on a receiver. I think he's in that setup right now with Atlanta, and yeah, I think Kyle Pitts is there, but we're going to see a heavy dose of Calvin Ridley for a quarterback that likes to throw to his number one receiver. But I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to just say DK Metcalf is my guy because I would agree with you with Ridley, but DK Metcalf is on the ascending tier. I think that he is going to take the next leap. I think Russell Wilson was pissed last year that they decided they were going to go pass heavy and then change to a run heavy system later in the year. And we're going to get a lot more of that first half DK Metcalf. The only problem I see with him is inconsistency. Week to week basis, he's a big body frame, so he gets nicked up pretty easily. So if we get 16 to 17 games out of DK Metcalf, he's locked in top 3 receiver to me. If we don't, I think he'll be a locked in wide receiver 1. But for elite purposes, outside of Calvin Ridley, he would be my next one. And I also agree with Justin Jefferson. I think we'll see a transition to Kellen Mond here later in the season as well. But I also think that teams are going to be focused a little bit more on Justin Jefferson this season than they were last year with Thielen there. The transition, the passing of the torch is there now. So I'm also going to drop down A.J. Brown into that next tier. And I think with the addition of Julio Jones, they're already a team that throws the ball for 3,500, 4,000 yards. Dividing some of those targets now from Corey Davis into Julio Jones, I think it's going to be spread out a little bit more. And we're just going to see A.J. Brown play at an elite level still. I think he's more that back-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2, very safe floor for A.J. Brown, but not the elite upside that you're looking for when you take somebody with the wide receiver 1 overall.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I could get with that.
With what?
I really don't think just judging off of how Julio Jones has kind of been moving when he's with the Tennessee Titans, I think it says a lot that saying that, he let A.J. Brown keep his number, even when A.J. Brown offered it to him. I think Julio Jones is going to settle in more, like letting A.J. Brown still cook, but getting his opportunities when he needs to. So
you're saying he chose the number 2 because he knows he's a number 2?
He knows he's a number 2. He got to adopt that role, baby. I mean, let's be real. I mean, that's what it seems like, right? I mean, you offer him up the number. He's like, nah, let me take this number 2 seriously. I mean, what is he really saying?
So you think Julio Jones is going to come from an offense where he was the number 1 guy, still putting up over 1,000 on trajectory to put up over 1,000 yards receiving. You see him coming in, settling in as like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 type of player?
No. I'm not saying he's going to be a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. I'm saying they can still get to, he could be a high end wide receiver 2, and A.J. Brown still eat as a top 7 wide receiver 1.
You think Tannehill has enough gas in him to get them there, as to get 2 wide receivers in the top 15? You think Ryan Tannehill's the quarterback with Derrick Henry there, knowing he's probably going to be somewhere in the 1,500-yard rushing. He's not going to be 2,000 again. Somewhere in the 1,500-yard rushing arena. You think there's still enough volume left, enough plays to be run on the field that he's going to be able to carry 2 top 15 guys?
Well, if you think about it, like they got A.J. Brown, they got Julio, and then who else? Who's their tight end?
For sure.
Who? Yeah. Who's their number 3 wide receiver?
Josh Reynolds.
My fucking point exactly, right? They got, this is going to be a 3-headed monster, right? This is going to be this, you know what this can be? This can be, I'm going to take it way back, Bolden Fitzgerald with my man Kurt Warner throwing him the rock. It can be something like that where it can support because they got nobody else.
They have a 2,000-yard rusher in the backfield.
That's true, but I think
Tannehill is a very efficient quarterback. I'm not sure if he has the volume in him to support 2 top 12 or top 15 receivers. But I will say this: I think Julio is on the trajectory of going down. he's great. He's an elite receiver. He always will be. He's one of my favorite receivers all time.
Mhm.
But I think that AJ is just more built for the slot. He's more built for inside throwing. Um, and then, but the thing is, when you get down to the red zone, especially inside the 10, they're going to pound that sucker with Derrick Henry. So,
Bread and butter.
that caps your upside. Whereas in Atlanta, they gave a ton of red zone targets to Julio and Calvin Ridley. So I think they'll be fine. I think Tennessee is definitely a strong playoff team, especially in the AFC. They're probably right now, I mean, easily a top 5 team for me in the AFC. So I mean, they'll be good. I just, I can't get there with Julio.
So let's move through tier 3, tier 4, and tier 5 the same way, almost rapid fire. In tier 3, tier 4, and tier 5, let's give one receiver, just real quick, one receiver who has wide receiver 1 potential and one receiver who is out of your top 5, out of wide receiver 5 potential, like will not shine at all. So let's go through each tier and drop one significantly up, one significantly down, rapid fire. So tier 3, we got Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Allen Robinson, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, Adam Thielen. Dan,
I'll go first. I think a guy that can be in the top tier echelon of talent for me on that one is still Keenan Allen. He is the number one receiver with the awesome
I thought you were gonna say your
rookie.
boy Dan.
You're gonna see in a minute. But, all right, you're gonna see how upset I'm gonna be in 2 seconds. So again, I think Keenan Allen continues to be an elite receiver in the league, and he's the number one offense on the Chargers with Herbert. He has the potential to be a top 5 receiver. Now, as far as a guy to drop out and potentially could just be a trash, is my favorite wide receiver prospect, DJ Moore.
No.
I think that
No.
yeah, you're gonna have to quote me on that one. Unfortunately, look, at the end of the day, he has Sam Darnold, and we don't know where his head's at. Was it Adam Gase? Was it the Jets? Can Carolina unlock his potential? Who knows? And he stated himself that he sees ghosts out there. So like, man, I can't trust that guy, So, and I think the coaching staff, honestly, like to me, they put DJ Moore in a bad situation last year. They don't put him in his natural position, which is slot flanker, which they did to Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson had a great year, and in that position, I think DJ Moore's more naturally suited there. And so I can't trust the coaching staff. If you're not going to put your best player in the best position, how am I going to trust this guy? So DJ Moore, again, one of my favorite prospect wide receivers. I had him ranked higher than coming out. I had him ranked as the wide receiver 1 over Calvin Ridley as my wide receiver 2. And I think that if you did change places, you would see that DJ Moore would put up better numbers, even better touchdown numbers than my boy Ridley.
Man, that's a shocker.
That's crazy. That's good. You said rapid fire, right?
Rapid fire.
I'm just joking.
Yeah, slow.
Yeah, he loading up a musket on that. Now the easy and obvious answer would be to bump Michael Thomas up there, but I'm not going to go that route. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with Allen Robinson as the next person to jump up a tier, right? And it's with those the reasons that I was stating earlier. He is an elite talent, and anybody right now is better than what they had at quarterback, right? So, and we're also you still got to remember the dude that's calling those offensive plays. He can write up some plays if he had the talent at quarterback to do so. Unfortunately, they had Trubisky, and then they had Foles, and then they went back to Trubisky. But you give Allen Robinson somebody with the arm talent as Justin Fields. Granted, there's a weather factor and whatnot, but Justin Fields has one of the best arm talents in this draft. And he could drop it. He could drop it there. So I think I might have him jumping up. As far as somebody falling out of this tier, I'm looking at well, there's a couple people, and this is a person I'm avoiding altogether. I'm looking at Chris Godwin, right? And I
Mm.
mean, he had one good season, but he was I mean, in that season that was still good, he had an injury. All of this year, he had some injuries. And there's a lot of mouths to feed over there in Tampa now, right? Brady's got a favorite target, Scott Miller. Him and Scott Miller have been clicking. There's still those tight ends, right? We're bringing Gronk back. I mean, you still got Mike Evans. You got two running backs over there. What do you expect Chris Godwin to do? Like realistically. So that's the person I'm dropping out.
Yeah, and sometimes, when you start thinking about this, I like those picks, but I am gonna go easy money. I think Mike Thomas is the player. I'm gonna hey, you gonna give me the money, I'm gonna take it, man. Mike Thomas is gonna be there. Jameis throwing him the rock. We've seen what Jameis does with his receivers, and in that offense, we know Sean Payton's gonna tell him to get it to Mike Thomas, man. So I'm gonna roll with Mike Thomas, especially with the arm to get it there now. I think we see him doing a little bit more than slant Mike, like he was getting criticized on Twitter about doing. I think we see a little bit more than that this season when it comes to Michael Thomas. And the receiver I'm dropping off, I think Minnesota Vikings are completely going to go the opposite way towards the end of the season. Adam Thielen, already somebody with injury history for me. I'm gonna get rid of Adam Thielen. I'm not going to send any sneak messages to anybody about his injury history, but Adam Thielen is somebody that I would drop out of my top rankings. And he's somebody to me that he may not even be like a startable receiver when he gets to the end of the season. So rapid fire, those are my answers. Michael Thomas up, Adam Thielen down. And as we move to tier 4, I'm just going to keep things moving. I know you guys are going to look at me funny. I know it. And I say this all the time, but give me Odell, man. Give me a healthy Odell, because I'm gonna save the other one for UP. I know you're gonna say him. Give me Odell, man. I think Odell Beckham for me is the player that can rise up and be a number 1 receiver again. I know the offense is limited, but give me a bounce back year, healthy season. He's a little inconsistent, which would be the issue for me, but I love the upside with Odell. And I think he comes hungry, man. To me, this is the last season for him. If he can't prove that he's a number 1 receiver this year, I think we see the unfortunate tumble of Odell potentially out of the league or playing in the slot or backup receiver type role. I like Odell to be a number 1. And when you're talking about players that are going to drop out, I look at T. Higgins, man.
Oh, my man.
I look at T. Higgins at this is, and I think that Joe Burrow's getting his boy Jamar Chase, and we see a change in the guard. I don't think that offense is meant to support 3 receivers at a high level. And I think Jamar Chase is going to end up being the guy sooner than later. I think T might start off as the guy, but that offense is ready for Jamar Chase to cook, man. So I'm going to roll with T. Higgins dropping out. I take Jamar Chase over.
You want to take this one down, or you want me?
Yeah. I'll go quicker this time. For the guy to go to the moon, I'm with you, Jan. It's Odell Beckham here. He has proven that he is an elite route runner. He's an elite talent. He has massive hands. He could snatch it from anywhere. Incredible ball skills. He should be a target monster. When you look at all of the talent that's in that tier, he should be getting all of the targets. I don't understand why he's not. The diva mentality hopefully has changed over the offseason. Baker needs to target him early and often. As far as the guy going out, I actually have Courtland Sutton going out of this tier. He's still rehabbing his ACL. I looked at his, he's got some Twitter posts. His brace on that knee is large and in charge. He's not close, in my opinion, at least yet. He's also got Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater. I like Jerry Jeudy to take over that mantle. So Courtland Sutton, goodbye.
Okay. Now there's a few wide receivers I like in this tier here, right?
It's tough.
Obviously you can see my background, right? And but I'm gonna actually go in a different direction. I think with the new quarterback here, no, I know, not Kenny G. I'm not Kenny G. I like, Kenny G's my man. Kenny G. You know what? He burned me last season too. But just to keep it quick, new quarterback. I'm looking at Robert Woods, right? With Stafford there. And when I was talking about this on the last podcast, you got Stafford finally with an offensive minded coach, finally with the functional run offense, a good running scheme, right? And when you look at these wide receivers between him and Cooper Kupp, who is going to be the one to catch those deep rocks that Stafford throws? Much different from what Jared Goff does. It's got to be Robert Woods. I mean, Kupp can catch some too, but I'm thinking Kupp more more of that, the short the short, I'm talking about them short routes. But Cooper Kupp, or excuse me, Robert Woods, right there. I think with this new quarterback, he can take a jump. As far as somebody falling out, I think I love my man T, but yikes. I mean, if DK is going to take a step up, Tyler Lockett's got to take a step back, right? I was never really high on him, although he at the end of the season his stats look good. Generally, it's just big inflated games. I know he just signed another contract, but no, I'm not a Tyler Lockett fan.
All right, let's move on to tier 5. Let's go even rapider fire this time. We'll go just say the name, one sentence why, and then the last tier we'll do is tier 6 and beyond. Find one player that you like and giving a quick explanation why. So tier 5, I know I said DJ Chark on an earlier episode. I would stick with that, but I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy. I know Dan kind of alluded to it there. I really like Jerry Jeudy's position this year. Taking over a third-year wide receiver or second-year receiver, ready to take that next step and take over this offense. I think he's going to be a dog in that offense. I like where Jerry Jeudy's going. And the player I see not going in that tier 3, it's got to be Robbie Anderson. I think DJ Moore takes over this offense. Even though it's Sam Darnold or it's Sam Darnold's guy, I see Robbie Anderson taking a step back. I think DJ Moore is now going to become the number 1 wide receiver for this team. I can see Robbie Anderson heading out of the of that bracket.
And they just drafted Terrence Marshall too. So, well, you took my pick. I was going to say DJ Chark, but I'm sticking with my man. You hear that bike squeaking, Deebo Samuels. He coming back. Yep. Tuck your chain, right? Deebo Samuels is a dog. The way that we use Deebo Samuels, he turns into a running back when he catches the ball. He's on these reverse runs. I'm seeing him definitely take a jump up. Maybe with the new quarterback can influence that. But if him just staying healthy, I'm seeing him as a wide receiver too. And as far as somebody falling out, I mean, this guy's just kind of been hanging around. Tyler Boyd, he's been hanging around there with these productive seasons. But with Jamar Chase entering the mix, somebody's got to fall off, and it's going to be Tyler.
Yeah.
Really quickly, in this tier for me, that can go to the moon. It's Juju Smith-Schuster for me. I think he has a bounce back year with Big Ben, as I alluded to earlier. As far as going down, I'm going to just go out on a limb and say Will Fuller at this ADP. I think that I think he's such a situational receiver. I think he's an elite at what he does, but he's always good for a PED suspension or some sort of injury, man.
Yeah.
And it's always something with him. And Tua, man, he's got to make some huge improvements for me. I don't see it, man. I don't see the volume. I don't see it's just not matching up for me. So Will Fuller.
All right. And so from tier 6 and beyond, we get one haymaker, one player. You're like, you know what? This is the player that I'm drafting after tier 6. And the list goes on. So we're not going to name all the names there, but your boy is going to take Michael Pittman.
Jeez,
I think Michael Pittman is my guy. Carson Wentz needs a number 1 receiver. They're going to force feed it to him. Give me Michael Pittman as my guy to take over as the number 1, a potential wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 pick.
So who's dropping off for you?
They're past tier 6. They probably already dropped themselves out.
Yeah, I know, right?
No drop, just the hero check, bro.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go Sav Lav. LaVisca Chenault. I know that's who you're eyeing, Dan, but I gotta snake that one. I mean, 2 words, right? Trevor Lawrence, right? So it's pretty self-explanatory. And he's been a little camp stud, I'm hearing.
All right. Yeah. I would definitely was going to piggyback off that. I was going to take LaVisca, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Not really, but Antonio Brown. This dude, AB. If you've noticed, I think it was something like, I want to say it was like 40 or around like 35 to 40 catches in the 9 games that he played. So if you double that, it's 80 catches, X amount of yards, X amount of touchdowns with Tom Brady. With Godwin coming out of the tiers, I like Antonio Brown. He's already proven to be an elite asset. And Tom Brady loves to use those old guys, man, those old guys for the win. So I'm going with Antonio Brown.
Is Edelman. All right, Good stuff, fellas.
Yep. All right, guys. Once again, we appreciate you guys. If any of you views stuck around with us, man, we really appreciate. I know it's a long episode, but we appreciate it, man. It's Justin, P, Daniel, and of course Clay's not here today. He's chilling.
Clay might be on the big screen or something. I don't know.
But again, we really appreciate you guys tuning in, man. Go subscribe, go like, go comment, go share. Do everything you can for the Fantasy Gods, man. Let us know. Stitch us on TikTok, all that. We do all the dances too, man. So anyway.
Like that.
So anyway, you guys enjoy your Saturday, man. We'll upload these videos soon. Anyway, final send off, man. You guys have a good one.